trust isn't just nice to have, but it's good for business. There are tons of data that's from Edelman's Trust Barometer to Gallup poll, and they say that when trust is present, employees are 21% more productive, 50% more of your employees are retained, and 40% less burnout. So it's not just, oh, kumbaya, we trust each other, let's do a trust fall. It's more than that. It's actually good for the bottom line.
Hey, BA fam. Welcome back to the Brown Ambition podcast. I have the pleasure of being alongside one of my favorite humans, Minda Harts today. Minda Harts, welcome to Brown Ambition.
Mandy, happy to be here. Thank you so much. And equally one of my favorites, humans as well. So honored to be here.
Thanks. And a human that I don't ever get to see really. I think the last time I saw you, I was in LA for a hot minute. We happened to cross paths at a conference, and I just really appreciated you taking the time to did we ever get coffee or what happened? I forget. We talked about it. We intended to.
We did, but we did get to sit together at lunchtime.
We did. Okay. It's all blurring together. It doesn't matter. But Minda, because you've been on the show before and I have gushed about you before, but for those who don't know, Minda Harts is a trailblazer, for me at least, in the career professional advice author space. You wrote one of the first, or definitely one of the most popular Black female written professional and career development books called The Memo, which if y'all don't have The Memo, I don't know what's wrong with you. Please go get it. But you're coming out with your fourth book this summer.
Yes.
And this one's quite different. So your new book is called Talk to Me Nice. Talk to Me Nice, the 7 trust languages for a better workplace. So this isn't so much targeting to you tell me, but it doesn't feel like it's targeting the worker. It's more like the institution. How can we actually, as companies, as workplaces, figure out how to better communicate with our staff, our employees, but also how we as the worker bees can communicate better with leadership. Is that right?
Yes. And it's, are you a leader and you've somehow eroded trust, maybe not intentionally, but it's happened and there's a communication breakdown. How do you get that back with your staff? But also if you're an employee and you can't get what you need, how do you ask for it without losing your job? Right. So it's giving both parties the language they need to be able to communicate better and close that expectation gap.
So why this book now?
That's a great question. To be honest, I really didn't think I was going to write any more books, Mandy. The Memo, Right Within, and You Were More Than Magic are 3 of my babies, and they were focused and centered around Black and brown women and young women in the workplace or in their journeys to finding their voice. And I thought, you know what? I cracked the door open for others to write their books, and I felt like I did my big one with these books, and I just didn't feel like I needed to add any more to the conversation, that I wanted others to take the baton and do that. And then 2 years ago, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to use the bathroom, right? I'm getting older, so I can't sometimes sleep through the night.
If we know.
Yeah. So I got up and I thought, and I had this voice in my head saying, what if there were love languages for the workplace? What about the trust languages? And I just kind of wrote that in my notes and kind of set it to the side. And then I kept thinking about it and coming back to it. I'm like, yeah, we expect trust in our romantic relationships, our platonic relationships. Why wouldn't we expect that in a place that we'll spend 90,000 hours of our life at, the workplace?
Is that a real
stat? And so it's
humbling.
Why wouldn't we want trust there too? And so I just started kind of mulling over it. And I'm like, well, maybe I have one more book in me. And I call this my crossover album because, of course, I still talk about some of the voices that aren't heard inside the workplace and how trust has been eroded. But trust is a universal issue, a global issue. And so I wanted to be able to tackle that a little bit differently in this book.
Yeah. Listen, it's been 5 years since the summer of 2020. I was in corporate America at the time. I think so many other workers, you get the emails from your CEO about how heartbroken they are by what's happening in this country. And you have these new commitments. Everyone's got a DIE director. They've got their statements on what's happening and the racial awakening and racial reckoning that we're going through. And they all make these big lofty promises, blah, 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 blah. 5 years later, I know you couldn't have planned it, but the trust is broken in so many ways because we're just seeing this this complete about face in the other direction, of course, now with our new leadership in power. So I feel like this book is extremely timely. I'm wondering your perspective as a Black woman or for Black women working in corporate today, is there any going back? Like, are we actually capable of trusting organizations again? Because there's so much cynicism, rightfully so,
Mm-hmm.
about the lip service that leaders pay to our community, only to then turn around when it better suits them and go back on what they say, what their promises are. Is that trust rebuildable?
Yeah, you know what, Mandy, I think the answer is yes. And that kind of is the thesis of Talk to Me Nice, is if trust can be built, it can be broken. And if it can be broken, it can be rebuilt, right? But it takes an intentionality to be able to do that. And I think part of it is we just don't know how to ask for it, because if you're my manager and you said all these wonderful things about how I am important in the workplace and this is inclusive, and then now you're saying something different and demonstrating something different, I don't know how to come to you and ask you like, hey, what's going on? Can we have a conversation? 6 months ago, this was important and now it seems like it's not. That might ruffle some feathers, right? And I can't go to you and say, I don't trust you anymore. It's just not going to pan out well. But I think that through the language of the trust languages, to say, you know what, I would love to talk about what a little more transparency looks like. I noticed that this was a priority for the company, and I just want to understand that, going forward, what does it look like, right? Can we have a conversation like that, right? Built on transparency. And transparency is one of the trust languages in my book, but transparency isn't about telling everything, giving all the information. Transparency is also saying, I don't have all the answers right now, but as things arise, as you feel a concern, feel comfortable enough to approach me with questions. And if I have the answers, I'll provide them. And if I don't have them, I'll tell you that, right? That would make me feel so much better as a Black woman or anybody who feels like they're on the margins, to say, okay, maybe I could trust a little bit versus let's just sweep everything under the rug and there's nothing to see here. Yeah.
I mean, trust is a process, and usually we learn about the love languages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been married for 8 years now, and together with my partner for a lot of years, an embarrassing number. I don't know. It feels crazy. I'm like, I don't understand how I have an 8-year marriage. Aren't I 24? Like, doesn't make any sense. But love languages, I think they are like, they're very, and even Gen Z talks about love languages and all that. What do you think, like, are the 7 workplace love languages, are they similar? Are they different? I mean, there's 7 of them versus like however many, there's 4, 5. Yeah. Do they mirror the love languages? Like, can you tell us a little bit about them without giving everything away in the book? Because y'all got to go get it.
Yes, please get it.
Tell me about the 7 trust languages.
Okay, so for me, in the 5 love languages, one of my languages is words of affirmation, right? And so one of the trust languages is acknowledgement, because I think oftentimes what I found is people would come to me after a talk or in my DMs and they would say, Minda, I don't trust my manager, I don't trust HR, or I don't trust my colleagues, like, they're backstabbers, all the things. And what I found is what people were really saying is what they weren't saying. Maybe they don't trust their manager or their colleagues, and that might be true. But what they were really saying is that a need that they have is not being met because that person isn't aware that you even need it, right? So for example, I would say, well, so what you're really saying is you need more acknowledgement. If you were acknowledged for some of the work that you're doing, these projects that you keep, you've been traveling for 12 months out of the year and nobody has said anything. Now they're sending you on another assignment. You just need some acknowledgement. If you had a little more acknowledgement, would that provide a little more trust for you? And then we started to unpack what's actually underneath the trust. And if you know that acknowledgement is important to you, how do you ask your manager or your colleague for it, right? In a way that they could probably give that to you, because nobody's going around the workplace with a crystal ball saying, what does Mandy need from me to show trust, right? But if I let you know
sounds like
that,
couple therapy.
If I know that, then I can
should know my coffee order by, wait, no, wrong topic. Sorry.
Wrong topic. But I think we do act like that, right? Well, you should know I've been working here for 10 years. You don't know that I need to be acknowledged. Well, you know what? I have to manage like 50 other people and 100 other things. So no, I don't know that. But now if you tell me that, and now I know that that's what you need, then maybe I can provide that, right? And so we're closing this expectation of trust. And I feel like through the 7 trust language. So acknowledgement is one, transparency is another, sensitivity. I feel like sensitivity right now in our workplaces is so important because we are talking about certain things that are a little more taboo that we thought we could talk about even last year that we're not able to bring up now, and so what would it look like even if I sit on one side of the aisle? I think about, you know what, if I say this thing to a group of people who I know they feel differently about my political choices, is that going to erode trust or enhance trust? So I'm going to practice the language of sensitivity to say, you know what, this isn't the time for me to wear my red hat to the function, right? So because that's going to erode trust and vice versa. And so I think if we're just a little more in tune and self-aware about what people need to do their best work, then we can have an environment where everybody can thrive and not just survive.
I don't want to interrupt the love languages. We've got sensitivity, transparency. I hope you have them written down.
Yes.
Transparency, appreciation, no, acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement. So you got 3 there. Another one is security. And that's emotional, intellectual, and physical, right? So it's not just psychological safety, but what about your intellectual property? When you're in a meeting and you say the big idea and then somebody takes it as their own, right? You want to know that you could voice your concerns and not worry about somebody running off and saying that it's their own. Another language is feedback, right? Oftentimes you might not trust somebody, but what is it that you really need? Is it that you need more feedback, right? And feedback could provide a little more trust in that relationship. Another one, follow through. Is it that you don't trust HR, or do you need them to follow through when you make a concern and then there's a conversation that's being had? I provide the information. They respond after they've had time to process it. And now we find a solution. We need a feedback loop. And then lastly is demonstration. And that's, the action. So for example, you mentioned DEI being like a big topic of conversation. So many companies were like down for the cause, 10 toes down. And now all of a sudden they're like that Simpson meme where Homer's like moving back from the the bushes and nobody wants to talk about it. But demonstration is saying, okay, even though we know that politically we might not be able to say these things right now, we're demonstrating that inclusion is still important here. You don't have to be a woman or LGBTQ or a person of color and worry, because we're still committed to the things, because we're demonstrating that each and every day, right? And so again, demonstration is the action. So when I think about trust, it's a noun and a verb, and it's very important for us to be activating that each and every day. Trust isn't a one-time event. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle inside the workplace.
I'm digesting everything you said, and I'm wondering, could we add an 8th love language in? Could it be money? Could it be like, pay me nice?
That's that acknowledgement, right? That's that.
Is that the acknowledgement? Okay.
Yeah, that's the acknowledgement.
Because I think a lot of people are feeling like, well, I would love to be like given feedback and all that, but I'd also like to be paid well.
Yeah.
So that's under the acknowledgement umbrella. Okay, good. Just making sure.
Well, listen, money is my love language, my trust language, all the languages. Okay. So yes.
Money talks. Like one of the things about this type of book is I feel like it's incredible and it's such a great tool, but it can be challenging if both people on the sides of a conversation don't have the same framework to work from. So what advice would you have for someone who's reading your book, and let's just say they are having issues with higher ups or HR, whoever, and they're wanting to come to the table and have a conversation using one of these trust languages, but they are getting resistance on the other side because that person is not as committed to having like a productive conversation? How do you get this book in the hands of like all the managers and the senior level people so that when I'm putting myself in the shoes of an employee, come to them, like they are prepared to have that kind of conversation? Yeah,
I mean, that's a great question. And one of the things I was so intentional about with this book is providing tons of scripts so that the employee, even if the person on the other end doesn't even know what you're talking about, because you're probably not going to say, hey, my trust language, Bob, is acknowledgement and sensitivity, because they're not going to know probably what you mean. But I have a framework in language that you could use to say, you know what, I've been on this project for the last several months. What really helps me do my best work is when you provide me a little more feedback. Is that something we can partner on? Right? Now that signals to that person, they don't have to know what any of this means, but they do know what feedback looks like, right? And then we get to provide examples of, after I finish a sprint, it would be great to know, did I hit expectations? Did I meet them? Did I succeed them? Whatever that might look like to you. And then this provides us a framework, because now we can stop creating a narrative in our mind that may or may not be true about if this person is invested in our success or not. They might not just be thinking about that you need that, right? So now that I've positioned myself to actually have a conversation that they're aware of, Now we could sit back and say, okay, now I'll know if I could trust them or not if they're starting to provide me that feedback. And so my hope is that managers will get this book and read it. And even if their employees don't understand what trust languages are, you ask them, what does trust look like for you on the team, right? Because I want to provide that for you. It's less about trust issues and more of a communication solve, right? Because we don't know how to talk to each other and people are fearful to bring certain things up. So I'm hopeful that Talk to Me Nice will create the necessary conversations to be able to talk about trust that in a way that it doesn't have to be scary, right? Because I think sometimes when we put it on the table that trust might be broken, people don't want to accept that because that can look kind of negative or sound kind of negative. But when we talk about what do we need to communicate better here and what do we need to make sure that everybody gets what they need to do their best work, I feel like it's framing. I don't know if I'm sure your listeners have heard it's not what you say, but how you say it. So if we package it up in a way that can kind of manage up to our leaders, then I feel like it's a possibility and we got to give it a shot. Like if people know what you need, then maybe they can provide it. But if we never say it, closed mouths don't get fed.
Right. And I love that you have those scripts in there.
Yeah.
Especially at a time when it feels like people are running. My cousin, she's 26, 27. She's like, I am using ChatGPT to help me figure out what to say back to this person I'm texting. It's like a challenging, her roommate or whatever. It's a challenging conversation, but we need human. We need that. We need the Mindas. And it's like, if y'all have an opportunity to get someone who has been giving professional like workplace advice for how long have you been in this business?
2015. Oh my God. Since I was 5 years old.
A decade. Yes, you were a child prodigy. That's right. Because you're 15. You've been doing it for so long. And I think that this is the access to, someone like you. It's how we get our message out there. It's how we give advice without actually being able to touch every single person. I want to talk a little bit about repairing broken trust and who is responsible for that. I guess it's a two-part question, which I know everyone loves, especially me who can never remember anything. But I'm thinking about how do we repair broken trust in the workplace? And then also the second part of that is like, who's responsible? Like who really carries the responsibility of repairing that kind of trust? How do we make companies care about breaking our trust?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Trust isn't just nice to have, but it's good for business. There are tons of data that's from Edelman's Trust Barometer to Gallup poll, and they say that when trust is present, employees are 21% more productive, 50% more of your employees are retained, and 40% less burnout. So it's not just, kumbaya, we trust each other, let's do a trust fall. It's more than that. It's actually good for the bottom line. So trust is good, for everybody. So that should be part of our pillars and our values because that's going to benefit us in the long run. So for those people who are like, we don't need trust. No, you absolutely do.
We're like, I'm paying you. So what are we even here to do? Like, do your job. I don't have to say it in the way that's this is giving I feel like this is going to be like catnip for alt-right media personalities who just love a snowflake moment. Like, listen to this book. They want us to learn their trust languages. Just do your job. Like, that to me is what's coming up.
And it will. And people will say, well, why do I need to do all that? Right. But the reality is when trust is broken, we can't do our best work. And when trust is broken, our mental health hangs in the balance, right? And we're anxious and we're fearful. And again, we don't feel secure in our roles and we're going to leave, right? 50% of people leave their workplaces because of their manager. So think about that. If our managers were equipped with the tools they need to be successful, then that helps them be the coach that their team needs them to be. And so trust is a two-way street, right? Just like any of the main love languages that Gary Chapman put out into the world, nobody can give me words of affirmation if I don't articulate that that's what I need, right? So with the workplace trust languages, your manager may need help knowing what you need because they're just not thinking about you day to day in that way. And that, that's another issue. But if I empower myself and take it back and let them know what good looks like to me, I have a primary language, I have a secondary language, and I have a tertiary language. Now, you don't always have to use that particular language till they understand what you're talking about. But if you can get under the hood and say, actually, these are the things that I need, that's empowering, right? And you take back the narrative of I work in a low trust or a high trust environment. So I would love to say that our managers are responsible, HR, is responsible, and as a, individual contributor in some degree, we are responsible for how our careers move forward. And I want to see us make trust great again, because we all need it. If you live in Tokyo, you want trust. If you live in North Dakota, you want trust, right? And so that is something that we all understand. You may not understand what it's like to be a Black woman in the workplace, but you sure know what it feels like when trust is on the floor, right? And that's something we can all link arms with. And when we can talk about a universal word like trust, then we can solve for some of the other issues that I think people weren't ready to solve for.
I mean, obviously, I do a lot of work with women of color, like through my career coaching practice. And there's many, many who I can think about who come to me and they are just so burnt out, not by like being overworked, but by having consistent and persistent, like chronic underappreciation from their workplace, from, being sort of like kicked around, like moved around, whether it's like you're moving managers too frequently, there's not a lot of investment, and they aren't even sure sometimes why they're unhappy at work. They're just like, I am miserable. I need to get out of here. And what I like about the concept of this book is not that I'm ever here to stop anyone from pursuing a new goal. I do a lot of telling girls to quit. I love it. Sometimes you just have to get out of there.
Yes.
But in this economy, you can't always just quit and go on to the next thing right away. This is almost like it's a toolkit to say, this can make it maybe more tolerable for you. It empowers us to take some action that can actually make things a little better for us potentially. And I just hope that, like, if you're listening to this podcast, BA fam, I hope that it doesn't feel like one more thing that we have to do, we have to carry because managers aren't trained and companies don't care about us. We got to care about ourselves. But like feel that empowerment that we can actually get more of what we need because we have the language that, a book like Talk to Me Nice is providing us.
Yeah. Thank you, Mandy, for saying that, because I don't want us to feel the burden to have to do one more thing, but I wanted the one more thing to feel like we're empowered, right? So if we are in an environment where we're not able to leave right now and we haven't had certain conversations, what would it look like to give ourselves permission to have it, right? So now we can say, okay, maybe Gina is invested in my success. Maybe she isn't, but now that I've told her, here's what I need to do my best work, perhaps they can now provide that to us, right? And I don't think anybody shows up in the workplace to say, how can I erode trust with so-and-so today? I don't feel like we're that malicious, like psychotic. I mean, there might be one or two that think that way, but for the most part, I think we just are moving at 90,000 miles per hour. We're not thinking and considering people. And what this boils down to is, how do we restore respect, humanity, and dignity inside the workplace, right? Even when we have to have difficult conversations. And I just think oftentimes we just don't have the language. And so I'm hopeful that Talk to Me Nice will provide language for the employee and the manager to be able to talk to each other without their let's avoid each other in the hallway when we see each other or on Zoom, right? So that is my gift to the world, that hopefully we can talk to each other a little bit nice when we know what words need to be said, or at least start to have those conversations.
You mentioned the first, secondary, and tertiary love languages. Like, how do we figure out what our ideal workplace love language is? I think mine is all of them that you mentioned, but especially the money one.
Yeah.
Is it important to, how do you help readers understand like what their primary language is?
I do. And it was so fun to write this book. If anybody's read any of my other books, I really wear my heart on my sleeve about a lot of the experiences I had in the workplace as a Black woman. And I feel like my other books empowered, but I also feel like this one was more of a very much kind of a choose your own adventure, if you will, because I want people to understand what their primary languages are, but also not just theirs, but the people that they work with, right? So I might be a transparency girl, but somebody who's on my team, they might need me to be a little more sensitive to certain cultural moments in how I talk about certain things, right? Or they might need more feedback from me. And so I also want to be able to equip myself so that I'm giving trust as I'm hoping to receive trust. So I don't want people to read the book and think, oh, this is all about me. Yes, you are important, but I also want this to be a mechanism for you to have better relationships and conversations with your direct reports, your colleagues, right? And people in your life, so that you're also enhancing trust versus eroding trust that you may not even be aware of. There's a ton of activities and quizzes and sort of graphs for you to find out what that is. And so it was just, again, such a fun experience for me to write this book for people to drill down into what matters most to them in the workplace. And out of all the conversations I had, people were pretty much saying one of the 7 things or a couple of these. And so I'm excited to find out and hear what people find out to be their trust language, because maybe trust isn't the issue. You just need a little bit more of something, and somebody in the workplace needs to know you need that.
It also can get you quicker to clarity on
Yes.
what your next step can be. So just like in any relationship, are you capable of giving me what I need? Some people are not. And so in that case, you have to make a decision. Like, are you going to continue to stay someplace where you're not going to get what you're needed and the other person is not capable or not willing to make those changes? And if that's the case, then maybe the best thing for you to do is to, move on or request to be on a different team, or at the very least, I know the economy is so tough right now. Take that information and just look at it objectively as a piece of data that you now have about what you need from your next role, what you're looking for in your next manager. Yeah. I could also see people using this to kind of suss out in an interview the language or like how receptive their manager or the senior leadership team would be to providing the kind of communication style that works for me.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I actually have a chapter that I talk about. Once you find out what you need in the workplace and what languages are most important to you, use those in your interview process, right? Ask those questions because you don't want to find another manager that's not going to provide follow through for you when you know you need that most, right? You're not going to be happy. Yeah. And back to your point too, is they say that 8 out of 10 people will leave their job, a job that they like for the most part, but because they don't want to have a difficult conversation about what the conflict might be. And so my hope is that we give ourselves that permission to say, let me at least have the conversation about what's necessary. So when I walk away, they can never say, well, I didn't know Minda needed that from me. She never articulated that to me, right? I had a situation in my former life where I thought I was going to get this promotion. They were quote unquote grooming me and all the things. And then they ended up bringing somebody from the outside and hiring them. And I was like devastated because I had this expectation that it was mine. And so I got enough courage to go have a conversation with the person who made the decision. I said, I'm really surprised by the choice when I thought that I had been taking over my manager's workload, all of those things. And like, well, you never articulated that this is what you wanted. And I'm like, girl, I've been showing up early. I've been doing all the things. And part of that was on me because I hadn't articulated. I just kind of assumed, right? So, I mean, not to put the blame
do the work and it will be acknowledged.
That's what I thought, right? But I had never had that conversation. And that gave me such a moment. I'll never let that happen again, right? I'll always be very clear and concise and have clarity about what it is I want so that nobody could say, oh, I didn't know that's what you wanted, right? And so when, to your point, when we're like little Inspector Gadgets, we need to get that information. And if you find that your manager can't provide you with follow through, then that's information that you can now think about and then say, okay, well, let me see, maybe I got 6 more months here. At least we have the conversation.
Yeah.
And that does something for us. So now we know. We don't have to create a narrative of if they are invested in our success or not. Now we know, and hopefully we'll have a better outcome.
I love anything that like offers an opportunity to zoom out, look at the bigger picture of your career and not take every poor communication, every poor management experience, every poor colleague experience, like as the end of, or like such a big deal. It was a blip. It was an unfortunate, it was a negative experience, but in the grand scheme of things, like, to not, so that we don't have to take things to heart so much. Cause I think, and it's not to at all, because I feel big feelings, as well. But I just encounter so many women in my work who are internalizing and really taking it personal when they have these like points of friction or when they feel like they're not getting what they want. Like that example that you came, that could really send someone spiraling into a depression, if they didn't have, the courage like you did to confront the issue, get the clarity on what was happening. They could really internalize that into, I'm not good enough. I'm constantly overlooked. And then you start feeding into that narrative as Black women, women of color in the workplace of like, we're overlooked, we're underpaid, no one acknowledges us, da, 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 da. and rewinding for a second or like zooming out and saying that doesn't have to necessarily be the story of what's happening right now. Does that, like I'm so empathetic of people who are going through situations like that and just it all goes internal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Instead of like being able to put it out there and get clarity and comfort from that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest. I spiraled for about a month and created this narrative of they hate me. I have to leave.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate me. I did all the things. And how I felt was real, right? But I needed to also root it in some facts. So let me go find out. Right. And I had to push myself to be able to go have that conversation.
That's not easy.
It's not easy. And
I'm glad to hear that you're human. It took you a month.
It took me a month because I was like, wait a second. I need to know the answer. And I think to your point, sometimes we'll go on the rumination ride of our lives and create these moments. They or may not be true. And I think we also have to trust ourselves and talk to ourselves nice. So I hope that people will also, start to think about what trusting themselves again looks like and their voice.
I want to take a quick break, Minda, but when we come back, can we chat about the other fun stuff that you have going on?
Yes.
Because you are a multi-hyphenate queen. Okay.
Yes.
We'll be right back, BA fam, with more from Minda Harts. She is the author of many books, but her most recent book, which is coming out this week when y'all are listening to this podcast, go get it. It's called Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace. We will be right back. All right, BA fam, I am back with my fave, Minda Harts. I'm making her stick around because I want to talk about what else you have going on. You've sort of carved out this career for yourself that's so multifaceted. You do a lot of speaking, you do consulting, you're an author, but you're also a filmmaker. Can you talk to me about like when did that journey become and what has the filmmaking side of your career, your business, however you see it, like where that came from and how that's going?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. Life is really a box of chocolates because you just never know where it's going to take you for real. And I've always loved movies. I used to write short stories when I was in grade school and junior high school, but I never thought that I could be a filmmaker or a storyteller in that way because I'd never seen anyone around me do it. But my mom would always have Turner Classic Movies on, so I was like always watching these black and white movies and just enthralled with them. And so it was always something, even as an adult, that I really, really enjoyed and studied. And then when I started writing books, maybe about a year after the memo came out, I started taking screenwriting classes at UCLA because I knew at some point I wanted to transition into telling different types of stories, but I wasn't sure what that even looked like, but I wanted to perfect the craft. And, they say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So I wanted to invest in myself in that way. And then the memo years later was optioned into a short film starring our all cousins in our head, Kyla Pratt. And so that pushed me to be like, you know what? It's time, Minda. It's time. And so
wait, slow down though. Because I know that Kyla Pratt star, but the word optioned is like because I am such a like a civilian. I'm not in the media, like the entertainment side of things, but I love reading the business, like the varieties, the Hollywood Reporter, the deadlines. And for a book to be optioned, that's the dream. But what the hell does that mean?
Yes.
Like, how do you find out that the memo is being optioned? And then how do you get that actually made into a film?
That's a great question. So I wrote a book and somebody else named Valicia Butterfield, who some of you may know, shout out to Valicia. She created a production company called Seed Media, and she reached out to me and we'd been fans of each other's work. And she said, what are you doing with the memo? I would love to adapt it into a film. And so we met and our peoples met, our lawyers. And so we just said, yeah, we want to work together and we want the story to be told on a broader lens. And she had Kyla in mind. And we actually met with Kyla at the Soho House in Los Angeles. And Kyla's like, yes, I want to do this. And it's been a beautiful experience.
In this book, The Memo, first of all, tell people really quickly just what it's about for those who haven't read it. Also, while you're getting Talk to Me Nice, you need to go get The Memo. It's a classic.
Yes.
A perennial classic. But really quickly, like it's a lot of your personal stories. So then the short film became like a piece of that, right?
Yes. So the memo was basically like part memoir about my experience of being the only Black woman in the workplace. And I talk about the highs and lows and then also how we redefine what success looks like for us inside the workplace. And so that book came out in 2019 and then it got optioned in 2024 and we went to production.
The memo only came out in 2019?
2019.
So you haven't just written 4 books. You've written 4 books in like 6 years. I don't understand.
Me neither.
And you're like making movies?
I'm like, who am I?
I thought you were a human, but
I thought
turns
so too.
out you're AI. Okay.
Yeah, even before AI, I was churning these out. But so yeah, then it went so smooth. And the one thing I love about having my book, the memo, optioned is that most of the time, what people don't know is when you get your book optioned, you don't get to be part of the process. You're kind of iced out, and whatever people want to make of it, and you just kind of get to ride the wave with your name.
So do they pay you money to take your concept or take your material? Like, is that how it works? And then you sign a document that says you can do whatever you want with it?
So when you get it optioned, you don't actually make any money up front. You would, and because mine went to short film first, and then now we're in conversations with some of the networks to create a limited series or a movie out of it. And so that's when I would see some percentage. But right now, it's just kind of like when you write a book, for those who know about the book process, you may not see anything for a little while, but
yes,
you
I know
that it's very important to get the story out. And so the one thing I loved, I had heard stories that oftentimes the author doesn't get to be part of the casting or in the writer's room. And Felicia from day one is like, I want you to be a part of it because I want you to feel safe that I'm telling the right story. And so that
trust love language.
Trust, and
Did she demonstrate it?
She demonstrated it, and she was very sensitive to how I felt about the situation, and it was just great. And we did different screenings around the country, and we've been selected to various film festivals to show the memo, and it's just been a really amazing ride. And it prompted me to say, you know what, it's time to, because I had all of these scripts that I had been working on my own outside of the memo and other stories about myself. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And
She's just a girl, a writer.
I'm just a writer. So let's do this. Because there's never going to be a right time. And so I just went for it. And I've always, no matter what, I've always betted on me. And that's just the way I live my life.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by the short film industry because my younger brother, Alex, has been on the podcast a couple of times. And he works in tech, and he has for a while sales and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like maybe a decade ago, one of his friends from college who had done, my brother has like a past life. He tried to be a rapper.
Okay.
There's some music videos that are very fun to watch now. He probably took down off YouTube. But his friend had this like cinematography business, and Alex slowly got more and more involved. And this is incredible for me as his big sister, because as we were kids, and I would edit his Harry Potter fan fiction. And we would just we were such nerds and we loved to write. But but storytelling, and I always thought it was amazing. He finally had taken some stories, and he learned by just like advising his friend's cinematography business in Atlanta, just being an advisor, being a funder, like he was funneling some of his hard-earned cash from his career in corporate to help fund the business. And then he's like, I'm going to take a shot at this. And he wrote a script, and then he made a movie happen. He made a short film happen, and it's been premiering at these film festivals across the country. He's been to so many. And what's incredible to me is how much art is being created that a lot of us won't get to see because they are only seen in these festival circuits, So how has that been for you, like to be able to promote the film and want it to be more places? I'm just wondering, what's that been like for you? Like, do you have a favorite medium now? Like, you've written the books, now you're doing the short film circuit, but that can be really fulfilling, but also does it get frustrating not being able to get the art in front of more people?
Yeah, it is frustrating but it's also empowering. And one of the things I realized, even with the memo, before the book came out, I started a blog, and that was just a few people reading it every week, and eventually it grew. And I feel like I'm back in my memo bag with my new short film, The Distance Between, that it's up to me to start to drip that out and share that information. And I self-funded this project, and I wrote, produced, and directed. I'd never done those things before. And so it was very empowering to say, wow, I actually feel like putting this body of work out for people to see felt even more fulfilling than some of the previous work I've done, because to create something and take it to the finish line, have other people say, this is a good story, we want to work on it too. It just felt so fulfilling. I often say that success is not a solo sport. And when I wrote my book, obviously I wrote it, but I had editors that helped, at the publisher. But in this case, success really was, it's not a solo sport, right? Because
Yeah, that's what my brother says. He loves the team of it all. It takes so many.
It takes so many. And when I first started the journey, I thought, okay, well, if I write a good story, then that'll do its thing, right? And then I'll find the right actresses and they'll do their thing. But then as I got through the process, I'm like, wait a second, from the PA to the colorist to the editor to the cinematographer, everybody's roles matter in the success of this film. And it's the entire ecosystem. And it's taught me so much about trust and admitting when you don't know something. And so it's just been an incredibly humbling experience and gratifying. And I hope that the audience will be able to see the distance between.
Yeah. Where can we, are you getting into festivals now?
So literally, as we're recording, I got my first notification that we got accepted to our first festival. And so
I know now that that's very exciting.
Yes. So it's very exciting. You're like, okay, someone gets to see it, because there could have been a chance that nobody saw it in that medium, but I'm excited. And so that allows us to be able to put out a trailer for others to see it soon. So stay tuned, and hopefully you'll see more of my writing come across your bigger screen.
So the memo, then, you're in potential talks to have that turned into like an actual series?
Yes, we are having conversations currently with some networks to talk about what that could look like. And so, that's also an exciting, learning experience as well. I want to just tell everybody, you just never know. You have to plant the seed, and you never know how it's going to harvest.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm so proud of you too. I mean, you are in LA. Did you grow up in LA?
I'm from California, but I grew up in Chicago, and then I came back to LA as a much more seasoned adult.
The best kind of adult,
yes,
in my
with
opinion.
A little more money in my pocket, right?
Hey.
So, yeah.
Yes, living your best life. You got your fur baby.
Yes, my fur baby Roman.
I'm so sorry. I know you posted about one of your puppies passing away, right?
Yes. So, but yeah, those are my babies, and so it's mommy has to keep working so she can give the fur babies their best life.
I wish I was a pet. It's such a nice life. A pet of a mommy with only fur children would be the best.
Yes.
I did want to ask, just acknowledge that you didn't grow up in the film industry, but that, just like my brother, we were so far from that. Atlanta was not even on Hollywood's radar, I don't think, when we were coming up. So how do you advise people, or give any advice to someone who's potentially thinking about breaking in to that space and learning more about it?
Yeah, well, I think empowering yourself. There's a lot more tools, I think, available to us now. Podcasts, I listen to 2 podcasts called The Town and Script Notes, and that talks a lot about the film industry. I read a ton of books about it. I go to different seminars, and then when you have the opportunity, just make it, right? Because I don't know Martin Scorsese, but I was able to make a film, right? And you may not know Tyler Perry.
Starring a Black woman.
Yes, you can make a film. So you just find your tribe, just like anything. And if you build it, they will come.
I love it. All right. So you've got a script kicking around right now, BA fam. Do something with it. And maybe you just need to find a friend who knows a little bit about something. They're doing movies on iPhone cameras now. Like, come on, y'all. It's totally doable.
It's doable.
Well, you're such an inspiration to me, and I wish you so much success with the book. I hope it is one of the 4th, not the final, because I don't think you're ever going to let yourself fully stop, because you're just a creator.
Yeah.
But thanks for making Brown Ambition a part of your little press tour for this book. And I hope you'll come back again and join us. And I hope I can see you again in person sometime soon.
Me too. And thank you for always seeing me. It means so much.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, Minda. All right, BA fam, please go pick up her book, Talk to Me Nice, The 7 Trust Languages for a Better Workplace by Minda Harts. Also, go check out The Right Within. Go check out the memo. We're going to put a link to your website if y'all want to follow along, see where her short films are going to be premiered, and just follow more of your journey. All right. Bye, BA fam. Take care.